So then we want to look at gaps and disciplinary issues, especially if you are a high school student, but you may get these questions as well as a transfer student. So educational gaps, please attach a detailed explanation of any gaps in your education or training listed on this application. A gap in your education is not if you decided to wait a year or two after high school to go to college. That's not a gap. The gap begins when you decide to enroll in a college and then for one semester, and then you decide to wait 2 or 3 semesters because of a job situation and then return. That's a true gap. If we were looking at the direct high school situation, say for instance 9th and 10th or 11th and 12th grade, and there was a medical issue that you had any of those times within those high school years, and you had a big gap, that would be considered a gap that you should explore within your statement. But the true gaps are when you first start community college or you first start university and you go the first 2 semesters of the first year and then you sit out the second year or you sit out a semester. Why did you do that? Was it due to work? Was it due to a health issue? Was it due to relocating to another state, changing colleges or something like that? So they will want you to provide a detailed explanation of any gaps in your education or training. Now here's a violation that when I give this lecture, I didn't even realize until I had to read it in class, but I'm going to read it here. Have you ever been found responsible for a disciplinary violation at an educational institution you have attended from 9th grade forward, whether related to academic misconduct or behavioral misconduct that resulted in a disciplinary action? These actions could include, but are not limited to, probation, suspension, removal, or dismissal, or expulsion from the institution. And I thought it was very interesting that the prompt is asking you or probing your behavior from 9th grade forward. So there's this expectation that you should know how to act right when you are in the 9th grade and forward. That you can't be the type of person who gets into trouble 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, right? You can't really have that record. And if you do, you're really going to have to explain your behavior. Maybe a parent died. Maybe you had a learning disability and you just kind of reacted. There has to be some kind of reason why you were acting up. That's how we will see it. You were acting up from 9th grade on, right? And then if you dropped out of high school, say for instance, you dropped out by the 10th grade, and then you decided to return at the end of the 11th or 12th grade, that would be considered a gap. It wouldn't necessarily be a disciplinary violation or anything like that, but it would be something that you would have to answer for. And don't get discouraged, we make these decisions, all the time. We just have to convey how we learned from them. So that's interesting that they would ask from 9th grade forward. And then it's asking you to please attach a personal statement or explanation if answering yes to any of these questions. In this part of the application process, if there is a disciplinary violation, you have to provide a personal statement. You cannot skip this part of the application process because you run the risk of the application being deemed incomplete. And it can only be incomplete for so long to the point that the admissions committee decide to put your application on hold until you do. And if you don't by a certain date, they could deny your application. So educational gaps and violations are very important to consider when you are going through your application.